So my role is actually digitalization. I think everyone puts different things into the CDO role, but I mean, my responsibility is everything regarding technology and the enablers in order to move the company from a very manual and traditional kind of technology environment to a more modern environment. And data is like a huge part of the strategy in order to have a data platform which will enable data science and other capabilities like AI, ML, the use of streaming technology within our offices in order to collect data which we can use to create other user experiences. I've always been interested. So when it comes to education, Wyatt, I have a Kent mark. It's what's before bachelor. It's the 4.5-year degree within psychology. And that's where I started actually. So I started actually studying psychology, and then I moved to the US in order to play soccer. And then I was introduced to technology and business actually on the school. So then I decided to do a bachelor within engineering, and then I moved on to a master of management. So it's basically, I've had a very curiosity towards different things which have happened along the path. And I think that's why I'm always interested in both sides, because I kind of have the entrance through education to both. And I think Google just bought Fitbit. So they have like a really, strong strategy in order to do something in health, and the same have Amazon. So I think all the big giants are really moving into this sector in order to, to use, their former experiences to create something within health, because there's no doubt that health will have a revolution coming, soon, I would assume. That when it comes to health, it's a very silo environment, depending on if you use public or if you use private services, you kind of need to collect your own data in order to create the whole view of yourself. And everyone is kind of wearing technology gadgets these days, if it's a wearable kind of sort. And I think just to be able to tie this together in order for a person to have the total view of health is kind of key for the future. Health is such a crucial thing for everyone. I mean, health is basically what defines life quality. And I think, with the technology, we could do like a lot of things, like you said, in development countries where you don't have access to the kind of services we have in countries like Norway. You should find, more easy and low cost way in actually to make people improving their health. And I think it's just a matter of time before there will get some kind of, in the private consumer market, there will be some accessibility in order to you to monitor it in a total different way than you can today. But I think it will always be a matter of, when it comes to data, it's always a matter of how comfortable are you that someone is collecting your DNA, for example, in the cloud or stuff like that, because it's like suddenly it gets, you never know what happens. And I think it's a comfort kind of zone we need to get past in order to actually get there. Because there's no there's security, but there's no 100% security that nothing can get, out of the cloud. I think just to tackle the company Stamina to get doctors to do video consultation has been a long struggle. And now with Corona, there's no, you can't choose if you want to. Either you can do patient follow-up and it's on video, or you don't do it. So I think definitely, Corona has pushed health in the right direction, and they needed that push in order to get there. I think basic things like, accessibility, how can you access, our services has been very like physical, like you have to go to an office or you have to make a call. It's very analog and it's very manual. But I think with Corona, it has been, everything has to be transformed into how can we deliver what we delivered this way in the normal world, and how can we deliver it under Corona? So everyone had to think creative about that. So I think a lot of the services which we offer, we have made changes to in order to be able to deliver it the digital. But what we are lacking and what we're looking at now is that in order to get, either the test, if you run tests from blood and stuff like that, you need to get that to a lab in order to, you know, get the whole kind of viewpoint on the health control, for example. And we're looking into, can we, you know, use like collaboration with companies to actually deliver that and move that into our ecosystems, because like we talked about yesterday, building ecosystems is the key for any company within health in the future, because you can only own like a part of the value chain, and you need to find a way to tie together the complete value chain. And I think that that's going to be one of the things, how are the different kind of actors in this is value chain going to, you know, behave, because I think health has been driven by bureaucracy and not the wish or the to actually collaborate. They kind of just want to do it their way, and I think there needs some regulations in order for that to happen. Because a lot of people working within health are very like people relationship oriented, and I think they kind of they feel they're lacking, you know, getting that, you know, connection when things are going virtual. And I think that's one of the things, you need to actually get the experience in order for people to actually make the transition. And that's sometimes hard when, if you don't have cases like Corona where you have to been forced to do that. But I think it's just because everyone I talk to, they kind of see the benefits and they understand it from a user perspective. I think they're just afraid of missing, you know, critical information when it's not actually live. And I think most of all, it's like when they actually have to rely on technology, it's like you said, they feel like when it's a matter of life and death, it's kind of like they will kind of rather rely on themselves than on technology, even though it's kind of strange, because technology, in most perspectives, are more, you know, correct than people. And I think it's for us, it's been a long way. We're trying to figure out where can you actually find touch points which is less risky, if I can say it like that, where we can actually test some scenarios, and it will be kind of safer in order to get that experience. Because I think in health, it's kind of like when you're a doctor, you're at the top of the food chain and you're like the expert on what you're doing. And trusting technology is kind of like doctors have to understand it's another expert area, and they have to kind of trust that what they want other people to trust them, they have to trust, you know, on that kind of knowledge base. And it's just kind of, I think you just really have to repeat the same message over and over, and then you have to show actually the effects when we're doing things differently. And the only way to do that is you need to find kind of like a lab environment where you have, because there are definitely a lot of scientists who kind of want to move in that direction, and you just need to find them. And then you can showcase kind of like, this is what we did and this is the result of it. Because I mean, health is very academic, it's very evidence based, and you need to show things. You can't just say, well, we want to do this MVP, let's try it and see what happens. It has to be evidence based. So you need to kind of collect that data and show it back. So I think that's kind of like the take on it. It has to be very like evidence based, which they you can actually show the results in an academic matter. I mean, you have like different levels, because you have, when it comes to the public kind of thing, it's like governmental run, and you have like state and you have the communes. And I think the hard part here is actually, I think the problem is that when you regulate things on a regional level or the commune level, it's kind of hard to get like a standardized way of actually how are we going to integrate to each other's ecosystems, because everyone kind of finds up their own way in order to make their own standard. And I think you need to find a way to make things more standardized in order for it to be an ecosystem. But I think I've talked a lot to a lot of health startup lately, and I think there's a really wish to actually, you know, collaborate. Every health startup is basically based on some kind of specific thing they want to solve, and they want to tie that into a bigger ecosystems in order to make it a whole. And I think if we can apply, you know, the thinking from the startup environment into the more governmental and, you know, state run activities, I think that would be a solution for the future. because if we're going to continue doing things the way we have been doing when it comes to the state-run projects, it will take 10 to 20 years before we'll see any kind of, ecosystems. Yeah, I definitely think integration is the way to go, because thinking that we're going to have a standard global wise, we can't even get a standard in Norway. And it might be that something amazing comes up that will actually fix it for the solution, but that's in the future. So I think for now, definitely building microservices which can easily integrate, because you have an API which basically defines how you're going to communicate. I think that's how we need to go about now, both from the startup perspective, but I think there has to be a higher kind of collaborative environment across, I think, the different kind of solutions, then across, like, between startup, governmental, and the companies working within health, because I think everyone is kind of sitting thinking, what is my best solution? But I think we need to hire the kind of awareness and actually think together, because I think that could create much more, sustainable solutions, actually. What it is, it's that actually I think the key is to get the right stakeholders together and have like an open discussion on, what challenges are we facing, because I'm quite sure that many of them are the same. And then actually, have a commitment to that we need to, use resources from all, like, stakeholders in actually to try and find creative solutions together. And then we have to kind of, get rid of, whatever is it my property, is it yours? It has to be an open creative environment everyone contribute to, and which can have a use of after. But I think the whole purpose of doing innovative kind of things is that I think getting people with different perspectives and different experience is what it takes in actually to do something about this, because I think no one will really solve this alone. Stamina Avanova, because it's going to change name to Avanova because the Swedish part is named Avanova. It's basically occupational health. So they work within the occupational health area, which is basically work related. So it's B2B kind of segment. So you work due to both regulations, but also due to employees wanted a good work environment for the employees. So you work on, creating, some kind of set standards to what you need to do in order to meet the requirements from the law. And then there are some add-ons you can add in order to secure that you actually have that kind of work environment you're looking for. So that's basically what they do, and that's a tie to the public when it comes to rehabilitation and stuff like that. And then there's a touch inward to the private sector, because we're looking at how can we affect, even if it's B2B, can we do something towards C? Because all companies basically are, like a collection of Cs. There's a gray zone, because in Norway you have public health, right? So when fastlegen, when you get sick, if you have a cold, you'll go there, and it's kind of like free, but there's a fee. And that's the kind of, that's one of the things I realized, that I think there's a too much zone silo, what is work related and what is private related, because I think they kind of merge together at some point. How can you be 100% sure that something happening private isn't due to something at work? So I think you need to kind of broaden this perspective and look at health is not just related to what happens at work or what happens at home. It's a total combined kind of thing. And I think that's some of the discussions I hope will happen within this, in this industry, because I think now it's so much more like defined that an employer will only say, I will only take responsible for the hours when an employee is at work. But you can't really be sure that what happens in these hours won't affect something after. What's it's on the strategy is kind of that you need to initiate you need to challenge the existing regulations there are, because regulation is, like we talked about, they're kind of the key in order for change, because you need to, regulations have changed throughout the years, and that's what needs to happen here as well. And I think you need to work on a political and governmental kind of level in order for that to happen. So I think what we have said internally is that we need to find a way in order to broaden the scope of what is actually health, because now we're dividing health into so many categories that it's really getting pulverized by, like, you can't really tell if someone is at good health or not because you're only looking at such a small, amount. So health should be broadened, and it shouldn't be that something is done privately, something is done like occupationally or something. You need to find all the stakeholders together and figure a better way for the consumer and the private person to actually, get a good access and good control of their health. In Norway, Stamina is the biggest actor within occupational health. I think they have a market share way over 50%. So I think when it comes to, there have been done changes to the one, it's called BHT in Norway, which is a governmental kind of regulations, and they are sitting and, getting feedback from the different vendors within that sector. And we're definitely playing a role in that. And we have a lot of, it's a working and social department, so we have a lot of interactions with them in order to what are their perspectives and what is happening. And I think we have had a lot of discussions with the e-health directory lately in order to see what's happening there, or that's going to affect, what we're doing. So there's a lot of touch points into the governmental kind of political area, but I think it still needs to be organized in another way where we can actually, use more time and not just do it sporadic, because I think it needs to, actually be prioritized in order to anything to happen. Basically into two things. The one thing is the different services which we have, really been able to work through and really have had a look at from, the corona perspective and what we need to do. But the other thing is the mindsets of the people, which I kind of think is key. You need to figure out, like I said, you need to be able to tackle how are we actually going to be able to transform, and then you need to transform the people in order to transform the company. And I think the biggest breakthrough for me is the turnaround in the atmosphere where we have these discussions in order to be more solutions oriented and actually see possibilities instead of just, obstacles or this is never going to work and stuff like that. So for me, it's really just a transition from the people in order to actually think that this has a future. And I think then you need the people in order to embrace that, because it's only through that you will get the good experiences from both the user and the one who's going to be the customer from our perspective. But I think it's really a matter of taking time to actually understand the reluctance to the users, because I've had so many one-to-one dialogues, and I'm really trying to get to the core of what it is. And I think everything which is kind of uncertain, and when you work with Life Matter, it's just that it hires the uncertainty and the skeptics to what you don't know anything about. You need to take the time to actually spend time meeting people physically. It sounds kind of weird when you're trying to digitalize, but I think for me, I've been traveling a lot around in order to meet everyone out there and actually sit down and listen to what they have to say, because I think you need to understand where they're coming from, and then you need to address kind of, all the questions and uncertainty they have in a manner which is more like understanding than it is like, well, I want to do it this way, so you just have to get on board. Because then you kind of get the people, it's more like they understand that you have a concern for, whatever they're thinking about. And I think for me, the breakthrough is really to actually spend time on that level and detail it and go through it, so they have like a more, because I think a lot of people really don't understand what it is either. There's a lot of words, there's a lot of unknown kind of pronouncements, which is very foreign to them. So you need to make it more like common and more like familiar, so they can actually feel it and understand, okay, then this is what it means. And I think that's, for me, is just one of the things I've noticed, which is the kind of key. It's actually spending time with people. The human touch, I think it's often underestimated, and you just need to really take it into consideration, because at the end of the day, it's basically I mean, for whatever reason someone is reluctant to something, there's a reason behind, and you need to find it.